Teachers, what was the best response from a know-it-all student you have heard? Story 1. English teacher here. I told a rowdy student to pipe down and work on her social studies test. It was a study hall. She said she would if I allowed her one meaningless act of rebellion. I asked her what, and she immediately burst out laughing and said, "Can I put a tape on your arm?" So she put a single piece of scotch tape on my arm, and then happily worked on her test for the next 40 minutes. Kids will never stop mystifying me. Story 2. This is one of my favorite stories from high school. I am not a teacher, but this is a story about my teacher's response to one particular answer. So, my high school mythology teacher, Mr. D, would have his honor class students help him grade tests from the other classes. He would always require properly spelled writing answers. No multiple choice for him, so we'd get the tests. He'd read off the answers, and we'd mark them accordingly. One of his questions was, who was the wife of King Minos? Now, according to our Greek lore, Pasiphae, Minos' wife, was the one who slept with a bull and gave birth to the Minotaur. So Mr. D tells us that the answer is Pasiphae, and one of the students kinda timidly raises his hand. Mr. D goes, "What you got?" They wrote Bulls. The class breaks into laughter. Mr. D grins and thinks about it for a second. I like it. Half credit. That's why he was everyone's favorite teacher. Good sense of humor, and the fact that the answerer knew that Minos's wife was the one who birthed the Minotaur meant that at least some of the mental connections were there, so they got credit. Great guy. Story 3. A kid in my math class would sleep on his desk. One day, the teacher called on him to answer a problem on the chalkboard. He woke up, solved the problem on the board with zero difficulty, and then just went back to sleep. The teacher repeated the same thing a few times with similar results, and then just let him sleep the rest of the year. Story 4. I witnessed a rather sad one. In my chemistry class sophomore year, one of my friends was going through some family issues, and his dad just left for a year or so. The kid was acting up in class, and the teacher was like, "Do you want me to call your dad?" And he was like, "If he picks up, tell him to come home soon." Story 5. Spanish class in high school. Two guys who grew up in Spanish-speaking families were goofing off at the back of class. One guy says that he could stand the weight of another person standing on his stomach, and the other guy, who was probably just shy of 200 pounds, doesn't believe him. So the first guy gets on the ground in the back of class, and the other guy gets up and stands on his stomach. The teacher saw this and immediately yelled at the guy on the ground to get back into his seat. Without missing a beat, he says, "I can't. He's standing on me." The other guy doesn't move because he wasn't yelled at. Meanwhile, the teacher continues to be upset that the guy on the ground isn't listening to her. Story 6. In a high school physics class, we were learning about friction and what varies how strong it is. So the teacher asks, "So, as an engineer, what would be some of the hard parts of designing, say, racing tires?" Some kid in the back says, "Getting out of bed in the morning." Added, "Thanks for the gold. It's, reassuring to know that the plight of the engineer isn't unique." Story 7. Let me point out that I'm female, since people will assume that I'm a guy. I taught in an inner city school. We were talking about prime numbers, so I would have kids give me a number, and we would work out if the number was a prime number on the board. One kid wasn't paying attention, so me being a young teacher, I thought I would catch him off guard and call on him. It went something along the lines of, "Mark, do you have a number?" "Huh? I need your number." "Come on, girl. Play it cool. We can talk after class." The whole room started laughing and I turned red from embarrassment. Then they laughed at how red I got. Story 8. Had my class of working class kids at an art gallery. As we waited for our tour to begin, we played on the small playground near the door. A prep school kid in a uniform approached two of my boys and said, "I bet I'm smarter than you are." I watched to make sure no blood was drawn. My students can hold their own pretty much anywhere, and they don't accept insults casually. But they were cool. "No, you're not. Are you in grade 2? The boy said he was, and one of my boys said, "So then, we're all grade 2. So we're all grade 2 smart." He went back to climbing the monkey bars, but the prep school kid continued. "I know I'm smarter. Let's do some math and I'll prove it." The toughest kid in my room looked this guy square in the eye and said, "Well, I'm smart enough not to do math when I'm having fun on a playground." Story 9. Tangentially related, a response from the teacher on behalf of the student. Had a student who came back a couple of weeks out of class. The counselor let the teachers know that his father had passed and he was having a rough time. I pulled him aside after class one day, told him not to worry about any of the work he missed, and said, "Focus on getting caught up in your other classes. I'll make things work out here." I was his 10th grade English teacher. We had already taken the end of year exam. As far as the state was concerned, he was already done, and that was good enough for me. The kid was straight A's until his dad passed. Cut to a few weeks later, I'm called into the counselor's office for a meeting with the student's other teachers. I double-checked, and he's been doing great in class, and the work I've assigned has been turned in on time, even though I told him he didn't have to, so I have no idea what's going on. Came to find out his other teachers weren't as lenient on the makeup work as I was. He had gotten behind in all his other classes and had stayed behind. Now he was in danger of failing everything but my class. He'd have to repeat the year save for English. The counselor asked me what I did to help the student. Oh well, I told him not to worry about anything he missed, and that as far as I was concerned, he was already caught up and he could do his best in class going forward. One of the other teachers said, "I don't see why we needed Mr. Hexed Dragon's input. He just let the kids skip out on work. That's not helpful." I replied, "The kid's dad just effing passed. You really think the last 6 weeks worth of history matters to him in the slightest?" The counselor smiled and pointed at me. I invited Mr. Hexed Dragon because I knew he would say some things I'm not allowed to say. Story 10. This was while working with 9-year-olds. We're doing number problems and a kid is having trouble with a sum. The sum is, you have 40 sweets. You give half your sweets to your friend. How many sweets do you have now? I grab 40 counters and say to the kid, "Here are 40 sweets. If you give me half, how many will you have left?" The kid turns to me and utterly says, "I can't give you the sweets. You aren't my friend." Story 11. Back when I taught first grade, we were doing a writing assignment about Thanksgiving. The kids had to draw a picture of their family celebrating Thanksgiving and then write about it. One little girl drew the table and chairs, and that was all. I knew she just didn't feel like doing the work, so I tried to prompt her. I asked where the food and the family were, and she snapped right back with, "They're washing the dishes." Had to give her credit for coming up with a logical argument for not doing the work. Story 12. Just yesterday, actually. One of my classes is fun in that we give each other hard times, but all in good fun and accomplish a lot. A girl starts giggling uncontrollably for no reason, and she's a bit of an airhead, so I asked her if she saw something shiny, and if that entertained her. Another boy jumps in and says, "Yeah, mister, Your head. I'm going bald. I wanted to pretend to be mad, but it was just too funny. Story 13. This is sort of a flip from the question. But there was this awesome history teacher I had freshman year of high school who was just always in an amazing mood. We'll call him Mr. Smith. One day, everyone is sitting in class waiting for the tardy bell to ring. When a kid sneaks a condom onto the door handle, the bell rings and Mr. Smith walks into the room, grabs the handle to close the door, and pulls the condom off of it, looks at the condom helmet for a split second, and stuffs it into his pocket while saying, "Thanks, I'll need this later." Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and activate the bell button to receive notifications to my latest videos.